It's the COO of OKLA. Well, we're going to explain that in just a moment. Agency accountability. It's next. Mitchell Talks the News 9 Stations with Aaron Brilbeck. Okay, the COO of OK. Mr. Brilbeck, I got that right?
I'm done with OPP.
Okay,
Yeah, you know
introduce our GUEST. Mr. COO, good to see you, sir.
Nice to be here.
John Budd, he's the COO of the state of Oklahoma.
We got that part down. We're totally down with that now. Not CFO, not CEO, not COO.
I'm done with COO.
We need to know first, okay, because we're big fans of where you were previously. All right? We want to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is the best bargain the double meat burger? I mean, dollars and cents. You're the COO. We need to know, when we're going to Sonic, what do we get that's the most protein per penny?
Most protein per penny. Might be a supersonic double cheeseburger. That'd be my guess.
And
I'm hungry already.
I also just learned that the milkshakes are real ice cream.
They are real ice cream. They're very tasty.
And they bring all the boys to the yard.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thanks for being here. You're going to head to Sonic right now. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
Let's talk about some important stuff.
Great.
More important than double cheeseburgers even. A series of bills are running through the legislature right now. And long and short, they're going to be giving the governor more power over agencies, especially the top 5 agencies that spend the most of our tax dollars. The impetus of that, obviously, was the problems that we had over at the State Health Department, the disappearance of $30 million, the magical reappearance of $30 million, the layoffs of 200 people. It was a mess. So the governor, part of what he ran on was more transparency, more accountability, and he's essentially saying the buck stops with me.
That's right.
Walk me through these bills. How do they work?
Well, in today's environment, these agencies have directors that are appointed by boards. And those boards are appointed by either the governor or the legislature and actually take years and years to turn over. So effectively, you have an agency director that is in place that cannot be removed easily for a number of years, even if that person is not performing well. With this new legislation, what will happen is the governor will have the ability to appoint these agency directors. Those agency directors will then be confirmed by the Senate. There will also be boards in place that will provide ongoing advice and governance for the agency directors. The other key provision is that if the agency director is not performing well in the new environment, the governor can remove that director, or the legislature can remove that director with a 2/3 majority, which is not a provision that's in place today.
You hit on a key point that I think deserves hammering home just a little bit. A lot of the concerns that opponents of this have is that it gives the governor way too much power and that he can appoint people as patronage jobs.
Right.
That's not the case if the legislature is going to be also overseeing who is potentially a candidate.
That's right. It's important that the Senate perform its advise and consent duties for confirmation, but that provision does not exist today. Today, the agency director is just appointed by a board. There is virtually no oversight over these positions in today's environment. With the new legislation, the Senate will have that duty of advise and consent to confirm the agency directors.
We had heard on the floor of the legislature today, I believe on the House side, this past week, I believe on the House side, they had in the past tried to get information from different agencies, and the agencies essentially said, we're not telling you.
Right, I think that can happen. Now, there are open records rules that require government entities to provide information. However, how they prioritize that, how long it takes to meet those requests can vary widely. I think with clear lines of accountability, you're going to see much quicker turnaround on those types of requests.
Now, you've already got there's no DHS board anymore, okay? There's no health department board anymore. Praise heaven. But so those agencies we haven't heard as much about. You've got these 5. Let me put you on the spot. The business practices, and they are entities that have money in and money out, right?
Right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being they're a great company, they're Amazon, 0 being the State Department of Health. Let me ask you this. The business practices that you folks have discovered since you got to state government, just how bad or good are they?
Well, I think what I've seen so far, and the rest of the team has seen, you have a lot of people really trying to do the right thing. We haven't seen willful disregard for good practices. a lot of times there is entrenched bureaucracy that is just perpetuated for long periods of time. There's an old way of doing things that's never fundamentally been questioned. So you probably wind up with a 6 or a 7, let's say, on the scale that you mentioned, not because of a willful desire to not follow good practices, but more because things get stuck the way they are and nothing's fundamentally questioned.
When are the taxpayers going to get their $30 million back from the State Department of Health?
Well, that's in legislation now, so hopefully very soon, and that money will be reappropriated.
And it's important to note the Department of Health set this money aside. They knew this was coming. They knew that this was going to be coming.
They did. I was not part of the state government at the time that this incident occurred, but it's my understanding, yes, that once this was discovered, that money was set aside, and it was known that we're not just going to let you spend that money however you want to.
Now, along the same lines, the governor is requesting that we dig deeper into the Department of Health specifically.
Mm-hmm.
What's the plan?
So the plan with all of these agencies is to start by making sure we're aligned on what the goals are for the agency. Are they mission-based? I think one of the things that we find when we talk with agencies is the goals they're measuring themselves against aren't really the same ones that you and I would look at as being what they're really all about. So we'll start with every agency, including the Department of Health, making sure we're aligned on here are the objectives you're trying to hit, and here is how you're going to hit those things. And then kind of working all the way down through the agency to make sure everybody's aligned against those metrics.
I don't want to bash the previous administration, but this seems like common sense. Why haven't we been doing this, not just for years, for decades?
It's hard for me to answer that because I wasn't really part of that. I do think what you've seen the governor do is try to bring in a mixture of people with strong government experience, but also business experience. These are common business practices. Now, I don't know everything about running state government, but we have other people on the team that really do. In my mind, the objective of the business guys that are coming in is to take the things that are tried and true around aligning people against performance metrics, making sure you have streamlined processes, making sure your organization structure is set up properly and employing those. So I think what we may have lacked in the past is the mixture of best practices from other worlds outside of state government as well as knowledge of how state government works. I think bringing those two things together will get us the outcome that we're looking for.
Well, it's good to see that we're trying to run state government more like a business. With a business, there's if you screw up, you run out of money, you go out of business. Unfortunately, with state
Right.
government, if there's problems with finances, you just raise taxes a little bit more. So there's this never-ending stream of money that comes in, and I think oftentimes within government, within bureaucracy, they rely too much on that. So it's refreshing to see this being run a bit more like a business.
Right, and we also know that it's not exactly a business. There are a lot of elements that are very much run like a business, but it's not. We're not trying to drive profit for the Oklahoma taxpayer. We are trying to run efficiency and effectiveness, but we recognize that it's not 100% like a business. We're aware of that, and we're going to run it accordingly.
But that said, there are a few things that have impressed me about the governor that just little nuances. So for example, during press conferences, he doesn't refer to Oklahomans as Oklahomans or as taxpayers. He refers to them as customers.
Right.
And when he's going around introducing himself to people in different agencies, he's introducing himself as, hi, I'm your new coworker.
That's right.
I think that's pretty cool.
I do too, and that's one of the reasons that I've really enjoyed working with the governor so far. Now, we'll talk about citizens, we'll talk about customers, almost interchangeably. The reality is almost every Oklahoman is receiving some sort of service from the state. In fact, everybody is. We're all driving on the roads, right? So in some sense, we are the owners of state government, but also customers of state government. And one of our key objectives will be, how do we measure customer satisfaction? How do we make sure we have satisfied customers of Oklahoma state government?
Can I ask this question, and just however you want to answer it's fine. I know that discussions you had with the governor before you came into state government, I want to say that we've said many times in the last couple of months, we personally like the people that have come into state government as leadership. How did Kevin Stitt talk you and some of these other folks that are on the cabinet? I know that a lot of people have set aside big careers, making good money to come serve in state government. First of all, you probably ought to be examined, all right, number one. But number two, how did you do that? What is about this man that talked many of our best and brightest to set aside their careers to come and serve state government?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my own story, which is my former employer, Sonic, was acquired, as you probably well know. And I had the opportunity to stay on with the new entity in a modified role and chose this time to exit. I felt really good about the last 5 years and what we were able to accomplish there. So I resigned from Sonic. I had my going away party on December 18th. And the next morning I got a call from the STIT transition team to talk about this. I was planning on going on sabbatical. As you said, a lot of us had different plans in mind. For me,
Let me time out for just a second.
time out.
We'll put that
Mic
back on.
check.
I'm sorry.
All right. I'm not a non-professional when it comes to this. So, okay. For me, it was just a matter of listening and saying, okay, I don't know much about Kevin Stitt. I don't know much about him. I'm an Oklahoma City person.
You didn't know him.
I did not know him. So for me, it was really about, can I get behind this person, and will I have the opportunity to really make an impact? And as I listened to what he wanted to do with state government, it's not about incoming dogmatic views about what policy should be. It's really about listening to customers, listening to citizens, trying to run the government more effectively and efficiently. And when my wife and I talked about this notion of should I go on sabbatical, should I take some time off and spend time with my kids, or should I pursue this opportunity? For us, it was really about an amazing opportunity to make an impact on the state of Oklahoma. Just couldn't pass up that opportunity.
So what have you learned? What have you seen going from the corporate side to the government side?
I've learned that a lot of things definitely apply. I think as a citizen, a non-government employee, you probably have some skepticism about what's going on in state government. What I have found is that people really earnestly want to do a good job, by and large. There are always exceptions. People have been very welcoming of the Stitt administration. I think we've gotten a lot of credit for treating people like coworkers, for being open to just being regular people, for really listening and thinking about ways to be better. So what I have overall seen is a higher caliber of employee than I expected to see, just given all the stereotypes we might have around state government employees. And then also an openness to change that has been refreshing.
How about your frustrations?
Well, what's frustrating, I think, is you don't have control over everything you'd like to. There are times when you have to do something that you don't necessarily think is the best possible way to go about something because the legislation was set up a certain way, could be decades ago, right? So sometimes managing through those changes is a little more challenging than it would be in the private sector.
And getting those rules changed oftentimes is very
Right.
difficult. At Sonic, if something wasn't working, you make a phone call, you change it. Now you've got to have a legislator write a piece of legislation
Right.
to correct something. It's got to go through committee. It's got to go through the House and Senate. It's got to be, it could be
It
time
does.
consuming.
Now, we found the legislators generally to be pretty reasonable about these things. They'll see, we'll point something out, nobody's looked at it for a decade, and oh yeah, that does need to be changed. And we can make that happen.
Good.
They're reasonable. It's pretty early in the session to say that, Chief. I mean,
It is.
There's quite a bit
It
of time
is.
left. My last question would be, I took particular note of this because of the health issues we've had in Oklahoma. Now 48th. I mean, thank heaven for the Southeast Conference. All right. I know that that's not going down with the governor, those sorts of numbers. But the day after, as I recall, the day after that the agency bill was signed, auditor and inspector was asked by Governor Stitt to go in and audit the Oklahoma Health Care Authority. What do we read into that?
Well, there's a few things you can read into that. One is we think the state auditor is an important asset for the state of Oklahoma. It's a very good team. We think that they can create a lot of value for our citizens by looking at various state agencies and making sure that they're running effectively. In this particular instance, we have looked at other states that have seen great results by auditing the Medicaid rolls and making sure that the folks that are getting Medicaid assistance actually are qualified to do so. So this is a matter of looking at practices in other states that can benefit the citizens of Oklahoma.
The Democrats are going to start screaming, you're going to purge the rolls. You know, this is coming. So for people who would think that you're up to some nefarious deed, what do you say to them?
We certainly heard that criticism, and I understand where they're coming from. What I would say is there are legislative rules around who's eligible for state benefits and who isn't. And this is really about, are we making sure that people are following the rules that are in place?
Well, it's great to have you.
It's great to be here.
I'm glad we understand now what to get at Sonic, and salute you and your wife for coming in to Save Oklahoma and doing what they're trying to do at the state administration. I hope you come back and see us again.
I will. Thank you.
All right, thanks again for Aaron Brillbeck. I'm Scott Mitchell. Thanks for watching Mitchell Talks, the News 9 sessions with Aaron Brillbeck. We'll see you next week.